According to Tennessee Titans general manager Ran Carthon, the Titans haven't received any trade calls about Derrick Henry, but that may not be the full story. I'll explain on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, general manager Ran Carthon spoke with the media today, and he had a lot of interesting things to say. He talked about not receiving trade calls for Derrick Henry, but that's only one half of the picture, in my opinion. He talked about Kevin Byard and him demanding for a trade or release and put that rumor to bed. He also talked about Ryan Tannehill and his status with the team, so we're going to go over all of those comments. Also, Ran Carthon made a comment about getting a blue chip player in the draft. I'll explain what that means and why I've agreed with that sentiment all throughout the pre-draft process. And then finally, the Titans may be trading down with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to talk about what kind of trade packages they could be looking at. Before we get into all of that, do want to thank you guys for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content on all platforms all year long and always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed and stay subscribed to the Locked On Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Want to give a major shout out to all the everydayers who watch the show or listen to the show Monday through Friday. Of course, welcome in everybody in general, but big shout out to my everydayers. If you guys would throw a thumbs up on the video right now, help support the channel. The show is always free. All I ask for in return is the press of a button. Do want to let you guys know that I'm going to have nonstop draft coverage all weekend long. I mean, tomorrow we're going to do a full mock draft. Then on Thursday, to get you guys ready, a full draft preview. I'm going to have live reaction shows immediately after all these picks. I am going to do full recaps of the day every single night. So Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday, I'll have a full draft recap for you guys as well. I'm going to be putting out content every single day for the next nearly 2 weeks here on the Locked On Titans podcast. So make sure that you guys get subscribed. But with that in mind, we got to talk about these comments that Ran Carthon made. And first, he was asked if he has received any trade calls about Derrick Henry, and his answer was no. No, he has not received any trade calls about Derrick Henry. Carthon said that people like to throw stuff out there, see if it'll stick in terms of rumors and trades and things like that. But he went on to say that if you don't hear it from him or Mike or Amy Adams Strunk, that, basically you can count on it not being true. But what I do want to say is there is some careful wording in there. He was asked, have you received any trade calls for Derrick Henry? And he said no. He did not go as far to say that he himself has not made any trade calls about Derrick Henry. He just said that he hasn't received any trade calls. So if you're a skeptical person, you could look at that and be like, I don't really know if that means that Henry isn't going to be traded. But here's what I would say. Ran Carthon told a story about how he was at a Titans event and there was an older lady there and she put her arm around him and they were taking a picture and she leaned in and she whispered, "Don't you dare trade Derrick Henry." And he laughed about it, talked about it. I don't think that Ran Carthon would tell that story and make that like a joking situation if he planned on trading Derrick Henry in the next few days. So even though you could be skeptical and pick through the wording exactly, I feel pretty confident that Derrick Henry won't be traded during this draft week or during this process. So Ran Carthon kind of giving some information behind the scenes there. Another guy that he talked about was Kevin Byard. And of course, we got those rumors earlier in the offseason that Kevin Byard was going to get traded or demanded his release from the team. Carthon came out and said, that is absolutely absurd. That is not the case. He confirmed that Byard did not ask for his release. He did not request a trade, but he also did confirm that they asked Kevin Byard to take a pay cut. And I could see in his eyes when he said it, he was like, maybe I shouldn't have put that out there. But he was being transparent and he was being honest. Yes, we asked Kevin Byard to take a pay cut. No, he did not ask for his release. He did not ask to be traded. So, I mean, hey, I don't see anything wrong with that. Hey, Kevin, we're in a spot. Would you mind taking a pay cut? I'm an all-pro safety. I'm the best player on the defense for the last 6 years. No, I'm not going to take a pay cut. Okay, fair enough. And we move on. And Rand Carthon even said that they have the financial ability to make moves that they want to make if they need to. Okay, so he didn't stress that the Titans were in some bad cap situation that they can't do anything. So, and I feel the same. They have the ability to restructure contracts. They have the ability to do extensions with players that their representation would be open to. So the Titans can get money if they need money, but there's no reason to go get that money if you don't need it. So why would the Titans make any restructures or extensions to commit future finances if they don't need it and they don't know that they need it? So if the Titans need to make a move or a move presents itself that they should make, then they'll find a way to get the money to do it through different moves that they have available to them. But thought it was interesting that he talked about Henry, he talked about Byard, and then finally, he talked about Ryan Tannehill. And he said that he talked to Ryan Tannehill personally in February. He said that the team knows how they feel about Ryan Tannehill. They know where they stand. And he said all three of these guys, Henry, Byard, and Tannehill, have been in the loop and have understood where they're at. Yeah, the exact quote was, Ryan knows where he stands with us, and that is really all that matters to me. Talked about evaluating the quarterbacks this year, which gets everybody in a tizzy. And he said, quote, it's our job to do due diligence at every position. It's not an indictment on Ryan or anybody on this roster. So I just love what Carthon did today. Came out, gave transparency. No, we haven't got any trade calls on Ryan or on Derrick Henry. Yes, we asked for a pay cut from Kevin Byard, but he never asked for his release or asked to be traded. And we talked to Ryan Tannehill in February and let him know exactly what was going on. And a lot of people are taking that, once again, as a commitment to Ryan Tannehill. But they didn't tell Ryan Tannehill in February 2023 that he would absolutely, no doubt about it, be the starter for the Titans this year when they could get themselves in a position to take a quarterback, like trade up for C.J. Stroud in the draft. They didn't commit to Tannehill in February. Let's be honest. They probably just told him the truth. Hey, Tannehill, if we don't find any other option that we like, then we're absolutely going to bring you back and let you be the starter this year. If we find a quarterback we like, but we think they need to sit for a year, you're going to be the starter this year. If we find a good trade for you, if we're able to trade up and get a quarterback that should start right away, then we'll probably have to let you go. So all you can do is be open and honest. And Carthon didn't come out and say, we told Tannehill in February he's the starter this year no matter what. He came out and said, we told Tannehill where he stands with us. So I don't see that as any kind of commitment. And it's the same thing that's been happening all offseason, why people fish for commitment when it's really not there. They told Tannehill the truth about where they're at in their evaluation. They told the truth about Byard, and he told the truth about Henry. So great job by Rand Carthon. He had a lot of great things to say. We're going to talk about some more things that he had to say. He talked about getting a blue chip prospect at the top of the draft, and it just hammered home the point I've been trying to make. Do not trade down in the first round. But then we're going to cap off the show talking about a rumor from Todd McShay that the Titans may be looking at trading down with the Pittsburgh Steelers. What would they get? Why would they do it? I'll explain all of that towards the end of the show as well. But for right now, want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. Look, guys, it's MLB season. That means grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back. There's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets, even if you don't win. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. Titans fans, we are going to continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We just talked about Kevin Byard, Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, their status with the team. Rand Carthon, Titans general manager, gave some great quotes on all three of those guys. Really enjoyed that. If you missed anything, you can check out the articles that I wrote over at Sports Illustrated at alltitans.com. I go over the quotes, go over what was said as well, so make sure to check that out. Do want to thank you guys for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content on all platforms all year round and always for free. Make sure you get subscribed and stay subscribed to the Locked On Titans podcast. I'm going to have draft breakdowns and instant reactions up on the show every single night of the draft after every single pick that the Titans make. I'm going to be putting out content and putting out a podcast every single day for the next 10 to 14 days, covering what happens in the draft. Make sure that you don't miss any of that. And I also want to tell you guys about Locked On's NFL mock draft special. So literally, it's like the draft is happening for real. All 32 teams, or 31 in this case, make a pick in the first round, and the Locked On host makes the pick for the team. There are 6 episodes. It goes through the entire draft. There's all kind of breakdowns from our college guys, from our draft guys. It's absolutely fantastic. All the episodes are available right now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or Locked On NFL as well. So make sure that you guys go check that out. But diving in here, Rand Carthon had a comment about drafting in this draft and about blue players, as he called it, which is shorthand for blue chip players. So a lot of NFL teams have a color system. Blue players are like top 5 players at their position. Red players are like top 10 players at their position, and on and on and on. So he calls them blue players, but that's a shortened version of blue chip player, which is a phrase that most people have heard of. But here's what Rand Carthon said about making this pick and it being so high up in the draft at pick 11. Quote, I would rather be picking at 32 every year. I'd rather be at least 31 or 32. For this organization to be picking at 11 with the success they've had here, it's kind of unprecedented. Ultimately, picking that high, we want to come away with what we call a blue player. A player that's going to come in and contribute to you immediately with the hopes of never having to pick up this high again. Ultimately, picking that high, we want to come away with what we would call a blue player. I've said this over and over again. Do not trade down. This draft has about 14 to 15 first-round prospects. Okay? The Titans are in a division and are in a situation where there is a good chance that they aren't picking as high as 11 again next year. I don't think that the Titans are going to be picking anywhere close to 31 and 32, but I certainly think it could be between 18 and 23. If you're sitting at pick number 11, you have to make sure that you get a top talent in this draft. You can't trade back so far that you miss out on an actual first-round player because there aren't 32 of them. There aren't 20 of them in this draft. So, as I've said all along, if the Titans want to trade down in the second round to pick up more draft picks. Because when you're at pick 11, If you trade down to 17, 18, 19, you're playing a dangerous game. Because here's what I've said. The conversation comes down to depth versus top tier talent. Okay? And I've got them mixed and matched or whatever. But I get that the Titans need depth. They need depth along the roster. That's a fact. But the Titans have missed on first-round picks so often over the last few years, and second-round picks at that this team and this roster is completely devoid of any top-tier talent. Not any. They have Byard. They have Henry. They have Simmons. But outside of Simmons and Byard and Henry, and maybe if Harold Landry comes back healthy, where's the top-tier talent? Like the blue-chip players that win you Super Bowls. Where is that? It's not there. So the Titans need top-tier talent just as much as they need depth. And you know what's harder to get your hands on? Top-tier talent. It's harder to get blue-chip players than it is to add depth to your roster. So that one pick at number 11, to me, is more valuable than having 3 picks from 75 to 125. 3 C pluses does not equal an A, in my opinion. So I personally have continued to say, and will continue to say, that you don't trade down in the first round because this team needs a blue chip player out of this draft in the first round. And that can only be had at number 11. You're not getting that at number 17. It would be a terrible trade because not only are you missing out on a blue chip player in this draft, but you're probably not going to get a first round pick next year either. And the only way that I'm okay with the Titans trading down in the first round is if they get a first round pick next year so that they can go up and get a quarterback next year. So don't trade down. Like Rand Carthon said, ultimately, picking that high, we want to come away with what we call a blue player. You're not getting a blue player at 17 or lower. That's how I feel based on what I see from this draft class. But with that in mind, we need to talk about the trade down rumor that came out. Todd McShay from ESPN said that the Titans may be trading down with the Steelers to pick number 17. I'll talk about what kind of trade package the Titans would be getting back and talk about the difference in player that would be available for the Titans most likely at pick 17. Before we get into that, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.com. Okay, guys, I'm just going to keep it honest with you. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing, we're always changing. I've changed a ton over the last few years, the way I look at situations, the things I think about on a daily basis. So therapy is really all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding of who you are, because sometimes we don't know what we want, why we react the way we do, until we kind of talk things through. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Everybody thinks about therapy like they have this big issue they have to overcome, or there's like one specific event that they got to go get help with. And that may be the case sometimes, but therapy doesn't have to be for people who, feel like they're overwhelmed. You can just do therapy as a way of bettering yourself. That's what I did. Felt a lot of stress. My reactions are certain ways to certain things. It was just nice for me to talk through what I was feeling, what I experienced, try to figure out how I could be better as a person. And I think therapy could have that impact on you as well. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, but it's really easy to switch therapists at any time, and there's no additional charge for it as well. So discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month today. That's BetterHelp, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Titans fans, we are going to cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast talking about this trade down rumor from Todd McShay about the Titans trading with the Steelers, talk about what the Titans could get back in a trade, what players could be available. We already talked about Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, and Kevin Byard, and Rand Carthon's comments on their status and their trade rumors, you could say. We talked about the blue player comment that Rand Carthon made and why it proves that the Titans should not trade down in this draft. But moving right along, before we get into the last part of today's show, talking about that trade down rumor, do want to thank you guys again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. Shout out to my everydayers listening to the podcast Monday through Friday, watching the podcast on YouTube Sunday night through Thursday night. Of course, appreciate everybody tuning in, but got to give a major shout out to the everydayers. I did want to take a moment and just say today's schedule was supposed to be the draft preview for the secondary, cornerbacks, and safeties, but there was just too much Titans news. I mean, I had to put that first. I know you guys understand we need to talk about the biggest news of the day every day, so had to put that to the side, hoping I'll be able to dive back into that before the draft rolls around. But tomorrow, we're going to be doing a draft preview. I think I'm going to have a full 7-round mock draft, my ideal draft for the Titans on tomorrow's show. Thursday, I'm going to have a draft preview going over all of the options in the first round for the Titans. Thursday night, immediately after the Titans pick, I'm going to be going live on the YouTube channel to break down what happened. I'm going to go live Friday night after day 2 of the NFL draft. I'm going to go live Saturday night after the draft. I'm going to have an instant reaction video to every single pick as well. And then Sunday, do a full draft recap with grades and analysis, talking about the players, schematically, all of that. And then we got a full week of podcasts ahead. So I'm going to be putting out podcasts and content for you guys for the next 10 to 14 straight days. You don't want to miss any of it. It's free. Subscribe, right? Just hit the subscribe button right now so you don't miss any of it. But Todd McShay came out on Monday and basically said that the Titans have had conversations with the Steelers about potentially moving down because the Steelers want to come up to number 11 and draft an offensive lineman. They want to get their pick of offensive linemen if they can. The trade would be, obviously, the Titans would trade number 11, and they would get pick 17 back from the Steelers, so there'd be a first-round swap. The Titans would drop back to 17. And Bloodwork just asked, what time are you streaming Thursday? I'm going to have a draft preview show out at 6 p.m. on Thursday, and then I'm going to go live immediately after the Titans pick on Thursday night. So you're getting 2 episodes on Thursday. Well, that's not the case. Sorry, I'm getting my schedule all mixed up. I'm just going to be going live after the Titans pick on Thursday. I'm not going to have a draft preview episode up on Thursday night. That'll come out on Wednesday night. So there we go. There's that. But pick 17, and then there would be really 2 paths that the Titans could take in terms of trade compensation. The Steelers have pick 32. I don't think the Titans will get their hands on that, but they also have pick 49. So the Titans could do a deal, number 11, for 17 and 49. We could see that trade. That makes a lot of sense. Or what the Titans could do is they could trade pick 11, take 17, and then get pick 80 and pick 120. The Titans don't have a pick between 72 and 148 or 149. So the Titans could choose to bridge that gap and get a pick at 80 and 120. So then they would have 41, 72, 80, 120, 147, 186, 228. So the Titans would turn their number 11 pick into the 17th pick and then 2 additional picks, or they could do pick 11 for pick 17 and pick 49. If it were me, I think I would rather go with 17 and 49 and have 17, 41, and 49 and 72, because now you have a ton of picks in the top 100 And I think that's where the Titans could do their best work. So I would do that. But let's talk about the difference in player that would be available to the Titans if they make a trade like that, because that's where the concern comes in for me. We can't know how the draft board will go exactly. So I can't sit here and tell you I know exactly who will be there at 11, exactly who will be there at 17. But we have to use general consensus here to have an idea and just talk through what the options could be. So at pick 11, the Titans would probably be looking at Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson Jr. on the offensive line, Jackson Smith and Jigba at wide receiver, probably any wide receiver they want. On defense, a top cornerback like Christian Gonzalez, or a top edge rusher like Lucas Van Ness, or maybe Nolan Smith if you're into him. So Skoronski, Gonzalez, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Paris Johnson Jr., Lucas Van Ness. That's what the Titans are looking at 11. At 17 or lower, they're looking at Darnell Wright, maybe Michael Mayer at tight end, Joey Porter Jr. at cornerback, any other wide receiver, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston, Josh Downs, etc. So to me, I mean, there's no question to me what the Titans should do. I like Joey Porter Jr. I do. But to me, Darnell Wright is a good prospect, but he's not in the same class as Skoronski or Paris Johnson Jr. And then Michael Mayer, I'm just not sold on taking a tight end early when this tight end class has 10 to 12 starters in it. Find one later. You don't need a tight end in the first round in this draft. Other than Jackson Smith and Jigba, I don't think there is a first-round wide receiver in this draft class. I just don't. I don't think that Jordan Addison or Zay Flowers or Quentin Johnston are first-round picks. I don't. And this goes back to they may get picked in the first round, but I don't think they're first-round talents because I only see 14 to 15 first-round talents in this draft class. Now, they're going to be 31 first-round picks. Todd McShay talked about this a while ago. I brought it up a lot. So I would much rather be picking from Skoronski, Paris Johnson Jr., Jackson Smith and Jigba, Christian Gonzalez, Lucas Van Ness than have to pick from Joey Porter, Darnell Wright, Michael Mayer, or any of the other wide receivers that are available. So it's really not a question to me. There is a massive drop-off in talent, in my opinion, if you go from 11 to 17. And back to what Rand Carthon said, what we talked about last segment, the quote, ultimately, picking that high, we want to come away with what we would call a blue player. The Titans need top-end talent much more than they need depth. It is much easier to get depth than it is to get a blue-chip player in the NFL. Stick at pick 11. Take a blue-chip player. Do not trade down from 11. Get a lesser player. You know, it's funny. People are in the Skoronski won't be there. Johnson won't be there. Jackson Smith and Jigba won't be there. Christian Gonzalez won't be there. But it's just impossible that none of those guys are going to be available. And if so, then the quarterbacks will be available. Or the edge rushers will be available. And you're getting Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson or, again, Lucas Van Ness. Like, they're at 11. There's only so many prospects that can't be there. You know what I mean? So they're going to have, whether it be Jackson Smith and Jigba, Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson Jr., Christian Gonzalez, Lucas Van Ness, one of those 5 guys will be there at 11. And I would take one of those guys 1,000,000 times over Joey Porter, Darnell Wright, Michael Mayer, or the rest of the wide receivers outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba. So don't trade down, Titans. I'm begging you. Stick at pick 11. Get a blue chip player like Rand Carthon talked about. Add top-tier talent to this roster and worry about depth later. The Titans need to hit on a first-round player. They need a real first-round pick with first-round talent. It's that simple. So I hope Carthon will take care of business. And the quote that he said today makes me feel really confident that he understands that you need to come away with a first-round talent in this draft. So I don't think the Titans trade down. But with that in mind, that's going to do it for today's show. We talked about Henry, Byard, and Tannehill, and Carthon's comments on those guys. We talked about the blue chip player comment that I love hearing from Rand Carthon. We talked about the rumor with the Steelers and the trade down packages for the Titans. If you missed any of today's show, as soon as I cut the live stream, it's going to be available to go back and listen. You can always download the podcast on Apple, Spotify, whatever podcast platform you choose. It is the Locked On Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Going to have draft preview stuff the next 2 days. Going to be going live immediately after the Titans pick in the draft. Going to have recaps of day 1, recaps of day 2, recaps of day 3, a full recap on Sunday of the whole process. 5 days of shows next week. It's time to lock in, Titans fans. And make sure that you guys subscribe to the Locked On Titans podcast so you don't miss any of the free content that I'll be putting up over the next few days. This is the best time of the year to subscribe to the Locked On Titans podcast. But with that in mind, that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.